Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back looking at these suggestions past developers for June of 2022, and it's now time to have a look at the naval stuff and the helicopter stuff. The reason why I'm bundling these together is because there's only one helicopter thing and only 3 naval things. So we'll have a look at all of them and hopefully everything will be good. At the same time, I'm feeling under the weather, so if I sound weird in this video, that's basically why. Hopefully I'll improve soon. Let's get into the suggestions. The first vehicle is for America, and it is for the Fargo class light cruisers, the CL-106 and also 107. Basically what the Fargo class was a modified version of the Cleveland design. The main difference was a compact pyramidal superstructure that featured a single trucked funnel intended to improve the firing arcs of the AA guns. Changes were also made to improve the instability of the Cleveland class design, such as their tendency to roll dangerously. And to further improve stability, the main guns were lowered by a foot, and the wing 5-inch gun turrets were placed directly on the decks. 13 were planned, but due to the end of the Second World War, there was only 2 that were actually built. You had the USS Fargo and also the USS Huntington. They were launched in February and April of 1945 and will be commissioned in late 1945, early 1946, then decommissioned by 1949 to 1950, never to be reactivated. They would be sold for scrap in the 60s and 70s, so didn't really go anywhere, unfortunately. When it comes to the weapons on these things, they had 12 6-inch guns in sets of triple turrets. They had 12 5-inch guns in double turrets, 28 40mm Bofors guns in 4 quads and 6 doubles, and 21 single 20mm. So very much like a lot of other American destroyers, a lot of guns and a lot of AA as well. The armor itself, the armor belt ranging from 76 to 127mm, whereas the turrets at most were 165 on the front of them. Japan gets a heavy cruiser in the form of the Takao class Atago from 1943. Basically what this was an improved version of the Miyoko class and was distinguished by a massive protected bridge which would have been appropriate for a battleship. The warships of this class were the largest cruisers in the combined fleet and were the culmination of the design principle established by Hiraga and the experimental light cruiser the Yubari. The design was developed by Taisa Fujimoto, who had succeeded Sosho Hiraga as the head of the Baltic design section of the Navy Technical Department. Torpedo launchers were placed at the upper deck level in rotating mounts to hopefully prevent loss of the ship in the event of a hit to the torpedo room. The resulting explosion would be directed upward and outward instead of downward into the hull, unlike the preceding class, the Takao class, which had an upright second funnel which made them easy to identify. The main guns could be elevated to 70 degrees, making them useful against aircraft. Due to the Japanese practice of trying to do too much with limited displacement, the cruisers of the class were very top-heavy. In wartime configuration, the Atago was 203 meters long and had a beam of 90 meters. The Atago had a mean average draft of 6.57 meters and at a standard displacement of 11,370 tons. Full war load was nearly 16,000 tons, with 12 Canpon boilers, drove 4 sets of single-flow impulse-type geared turbines, providing a total 130,000 horsepower, turning 4 shafts and with 3 bladed propellers. Top speed was about 35.5 knots, and it was the complement of it was 990 officers and also men. All 4 cruisers were commissioned between the 30th of March 1932 and the 30th of June 1932. They were registered at the Yokosuka Naval Yard until they were removed from the Navy list. They replaced the earlier Miyoko-class heavy cruisers in Cruiser Division 4 of the 2nd Fleet, and between the 31st of May and the 2nd of June, the 4 heavy cruisers took part in training and fleet maneuvers, during which their top heaviness became evident, leading to the rebuilding of the Takao and the Atago at Yokosuka in 1939. The modifications essentially created new ships that had new profiles and were superior to the earlier models in the balance among armament, speed, and defense. Maya and Chokai were never modified as completely as the other two heavy cruisers. Following their rebuild, Takao and Atago returned to Cruiser Division 4 and cruised off China, supporting operations there. Takao, Atago, Maya, and Chokai joined the battleships Congo and Haruna in Battleship Division 3 in the Pescadores Islands as the main body of the Southern Area Force under Admiral Kondo. This group provided distant cover for early war operations in Malaya and Borneo. During the February of 42, Takao and Atago and Maya remained at Palau to carry out anti-submarine operations, a use for these ships as puzzling as the later installation of depth charge racks on them. When the US attacked Guadalcanal, Cruiser Division 4 teamed up with Cruiser Division 5 and joined Admiral Nagumo's carrier force. This powerful force took on US Task Force 61 in the Battle of the Solomons. All 5 heavy cruisers took part in night battles with the US forces and helped sink the burning hulk of the aircraft carrier USS Hornet at the end of the Battle of Santa Cruz. On the night of the 15th of November 1942, Takao and Atago, along with the old battleship Kirishima and destroyers, was sent to bombard Henderson Field, but ran into battleships the USS South Dakota and the Washington. The 2 US battleships concentrated fire on the Kirishima, leaving the 2 heavy cruisers free to engage. South Dakota absorbed at least 16 high-explosive 203mm shells fired from the distance of 5,000 meters by the Japanese heavy cruisers. Takao was not hit, but Atago received minor damage. Kirishima caught fire due to explosions and was soon dead in the water and later sank. South Dakota withdrew under her own power and was repaired to fight another day. Following additional support actions during the evacuation of Guadalcanal, Takao, Maya, and Atago received Type 21 radar and triple 25mm machine gun mounts at Yokosuka. Following this, they returned to Truk and took part in combined fleet operations around Eniwetok Atoll. The heavy cruisers of Cruiser Division 4 were at anchor in Simpson Harbor at Rabaul on the 5th of November 43. They were attacked by carrier planes from US Task Force 38, and Takao was hit with a 225-kilo bomb on the upper deck and the number 2 turret barbette. After another stay in the dry dock at Yokosuka and more shuttling to Truk, Cruiser Division 4 participated in the Battle of the Marianas on the 19th to 20th of June 44, but did not fire on any enemy ships. On the 22nd of October 1944, the 4 Takao-class heavy cruisers steamed through the Palawan Passage at the start of the Battle of Leyte Gulf. On the 23rd of October, the Takao was hit with 2 53.3cm Mark 14 torpedoes fired from the stem tubes of the submarine USS Data, which had just fired torpedoes at the bow tubes at the Atago. Torpedo hits flooded boiler rooms and damaged the rudder and starboard propellers. A fire was started and the ship took a 10-degree list. Counter-flooding righted the ship, now dangerously low in the water, after the fire was put out. The stricken Takao slowly made way to Brunei, escorted by 2 destroyers. Data had also hit the Atago at 0553 with a 4-torpedo spread, which reduced the ship, which later sank to rubble. 360 of Atago's crewmen were killed, but 529 survivors, including Vice Admiral Kurita, his COS Rear Admiral Koyanagi Tomiji, and Skipper Rear Admiral Araki Tsutao, are rescued by IJN Kishinami. 171 other survivors are also rescued from or by Asashimo. The shaken Admiral Kurita transferred his flag to the Atago to the battleship Yamato. At the same time, submarine USS Dace sank the Proud Maya with a 4-torpedo spread from the bow tubes, which struck the cruiser on the port side. On the 20th of December 1944, the heavy cruiser Atago was removed from the naval list. So, at least it's kind of an interesting design. Had 5 dual sets of 203mm, 4 dual sets of 127s, and a ton of 25mm on it to try and keep it alive from aircraft. Hopefully it comes to the game. I'm sure it will at some point. The Italians get a light cruiser, the Giuseppe Garibaldi, and this one is actually pretty interesting. The Garibaldi was the second ship of the 5th iteration of the condottieri type of light cruiser. The first iteration is already represented in the game with the Bartolomeo Colleoni of the Giussano class. The third iteration is represented by the Raimondo Montecuccoli of the Montecuccoli class. While there are clear lines of design that can be traced from the Abruzzi back through multiple classes to the Colleoni, the condottieri class are in fact 5 distinct classes of light cruisers. These ships represent the Regia Marina's efforts to build competitive light cruisers adhering to the Washington Naval Treaty, while also engaged in a naval arms race with France and to a lesser extent Britain, with the goal of exerting naval dominance in the Mediterranean. As the final iteration of the condottieri, the Abruzzi class had the most robust protection scheme, using the same scheme as the Zara class heavy cruisers, and added 2 more 6-inch guns by converting the bottom fore and aft turrets into triple mounts. Between the improved protection and the additional guns, the Abruzzi class was slower than their predecessors, but clearly the most capable. They were 2 ships in the class, both laid down in 1936 and completed in 1937. The Luigi di Savoia Duca degli Abruzzi on the 1st of December 37, and the Giuseppe Garibaldi on the 20th of December. These ships would serve throughout World War II, and as they were usually operated together, they largely participated in the same battles. The vehicle itself seemed to do pretty well, but overall, obviously, didn't do as well as the other side. It had 10 6-inch guns, 8 3-point-inch guns, and 8 37mm on top of 8 13.2mm. So a decent AA complement as well as main caliber armament. It also had 6 21-inch torpedoes that it could use, and also some aircraft catapults to go along with it. For helicopters, you have the Paramount Group Nighthawk Mi-24 upgrade, which was previously known as the AT System Super Hind, the Mark III, or the Mark IV. Basically, the Super Hind was a modernization package made by ATE of South Africa, which first flew in 1999. Much of the Mi-24 was unchanged beyond changes to the avionics. The most notable changes are the additions of a turreted 20mm on the nose and also redesigned wingtips. The Super Hind Mark III was intended for export. ATE would go on to develop the Mark IV with further improved avionics, weapon options, and additional packages including air filters, and the Mark V with a completely redesigned cockpit and also canopy. When it comes to the 20mm, it was the GI2 dual-feed 20mm cannon at a 720 RPM fire rate, which also had burst fire. It also, at the same time, had a ton of different rounds it could use, HEI, APC, even practice rounds with it, of course. And then, when it comes to ATGMs, it could have the Sturm 5s, or 8 ZT3 Ingwe ATGMs, which we actually already have in the game. It also could carry rockets in the form of 57mm or 80mm size, then 250 or 500 kilo bombs. The Ingwe, or the Leopard ATGM, is a laser-guided beam-riding tandem charge ATGM capable of penetrating 1,000mm of armor protected by a single layer of ERA. The system was designed to be used on either land or air platforms with a range of over 5,000 meters. And overall, this would just be a Hind with a few extra bells and whistles, not just when it comes to its weapons, but also its avionics suite. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman675, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Jerry Prevolt, Megadino King, Orange Tail, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Uncle Bean, Sem Arslan, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.